Well, usually I'm doing my lectures on my own, of course, but today I really feel that I should have brought my better half, Petter. Not because I need assistance, but because we are kind of a complementary team, and in particular when it comes to today's subject, which is ethic and travel. I'm really not here to tell a love story, so I will do a long story short. Peter, he's a hardcore capitalist. He's a hotel entrepreneur and owner of the Nordic Choice Hospitality Group. And he marries an academic geek, me, a doctor, and you're laughing, that's okay. But I'm an environmentalist by heart. Since I was a kid, I wanted to do a difference. And the interesting thing about this, which I think is relevant for you, is the possibilities that evolve when corporate marries responsibility. The slogan on Peter and my business card is, "There is no business on a dead planet." And what does that mean? Well, when we are about to destroy the planet where we live, and overexploit the resources we are dependent on, business as usual is simply not an option. And if we agree upon that, and I think we all do, when business as usual is no longer an option, the next big question is there big business in sustainable business? Do you think so? I mean, it's obviously, you can't save the world. You can't do a thing if your company is bankrupt. But it turns out what's good for the society is often quite good for business too. Not necessarily only in the long-term perspective. I mean, not only in 10, 20 years' time, but even right now. Literally, it could be today. So to prove this, and a lot more, of course, I set up a small foundation called Stordalen Foundation, and then it spun off one more, GreeNudge. Have a look on this little video.
Food is precious, so why waste it? Here's how restaurants can save both money and the environment without anyone really noticing. A minor adjustment with major impacts. We love food, yet 1/3 of what we produce never gets eaten. In Europe, 90 million tons of food is wasted every year, generating more greenhouse gases than 36 coal plants or 80 million cars. In restaurants, 2/3 of what we throw away is leftovers from our plates. Waiters can't force guests to finish their meals, but perhaps they can be nudged. Our eyes are bigger than our stomach. When given plates of different sizes, even trained nutritionists are not able to make out a right portion. A normal meal simply looks skimpier on a bigger plate. We wanted to test whether downsizing the plates on buffets would encourage guests to help themselves with the right amount and then come back for more rather than taking too much at once. Nordic Choice Hotels, the biggest hotel chain in Scandinavia, has taken measures to reduce food waste from their restaurants. We arranged for scientists from Cicero to study the effect when they replaced these with these. Hotel staff weighed and reported food waste daily, before and after the intervention. They even measured and recorded feedback from their guests. The results were striking. Even though waste production varied, the smaller plates reduced food wasted by an average of 20%. And the guests, just as happy. The managers, even happier. Throwing money away is never good for business. Restaurants do it twice. First, by purchasing too much food, then by paying for the disposal of what's perfectly edible. In Norway, every kilo of food waste costs restaurants more than €6. If the entire European food service industry could cut 1/5 of their food waste, 2.5 million tons and billions of euros worth of perfectly good food could be enjoyed, not wasted. We would save the entire CO2 production of Iceland, ×2. You see, minor adjustments can make major impacts. All it takes is a nudge.
This was one of our first studies. But before I continue, what is a nudge? Do you know it? There's somebody pushing up there? That's correct. I will get back to it, but interestingly, one of the most famous nudges all over is actually from the travel industry. Or more precisely, it's from the men's room at Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam. Just by adding small stickers of a fly to each urinal at a certain spot, urine spilling at the floor was reduced by an average of 80%. Can you imagine that? It's quite simple, but it's quite brilliant. If you just give men something to aim for, you will keep your restroom clean. It's funny for us women. But the word nudge means a friendly signal or a small push to gain attention. The behavioral economists, they define it in a slightly more sophisticated way. They say it's a way of designing choices to alter people's behavior in a predictable or desirable way without prohibiting any options. And behavioral science, it's nothing new. I talked to Lena, and she's been into marketing, and marketing industry has been using nudging for ages and decades. But it's kind of a new tool to be applied in the climate battle. So before I continue, I would like to clarify that reducing food waste by smaller plates will of course never save the world. The most important progress is in the hands of these guys. They not only have to improve, but totally transform our energy system. That's the most important thing. But I'm a die-hard optimist, always. And I'm a strong believer in democracy and diplomacy. But I've realized these complex processes takes time. And whatever these guys agree upon, with respect to a new climate agreement, will not take effect before in 2020. And that's a long time. It's 7 years. And it goes without saying, we don't have time to sit around and wait, doing nothing. And fortunately, today, we have pretty much lots of the solutions. The technical solutions are basically there. We can do a lot. And there's so many quick fixes, so many quick, cost-effective fixes out there that we don't apply. Even though there are low-hanging fruits in the front of us. And why is it so? I'm usually saying this is the missing link or the gap between knowledge and action. Because there is a huge gap between what we know, the technologies we possess, and what we actually apply. And the interesting question is, how can we scale up the implementation of all these smart solutions out there? Obviously, in some cases, we need strong regulations, taxes, so on. And in other cases, we need a great push, maybe even a kick in the ass, and we need strong incentives. But you guys will be surprised on how many times all you need is a small nudge, of course. So in GreeNudge, the organization I founded 2 years ago, we aim to identify measures to alter people's behavior in an environmental friendly way without prohibiting any options or substantially changing costs. And GreeNudge is an organization which is all about no pointing of fingers, merely providing a helping hand. It's rather about minor adjustments with major impacts, measurable impacts, such as this one, which is also kind of exciting.
Here's the story of our first green nudge. It's the story of how we can change customer behaviour to the benefit of everyone. A story of how better energy labelling can help European consumers save the environment and money at the same time. We know people have a tendency to underestimate the total cost of things they buy. When buying a car, we focus on its sales price rather than its yearly gas expenses. Most people never consider buying the most expensive tumble dryer in the store, even if it will be the cheapest in use at home. We wanted to test if people would buy more energy-efficient appliances if they knew the total lifetime costs. This is what we did. We teamed up with Elkjøp, the biggest electronics retailer in Scandinavia, to see if scientists from Cicero could nudge customers to buy greener tumble dryers. The Elkjøp staff were specially trained to inform customers on energy costs. We taught them that the cheapest dryer might end up more expensive in the long run compared to a higher priced yet more energy efficient one. Then, next to the regular price tags and the EU energy labels, we added these, showing the electricity costs for 10 years of normal use. This allowed the staff and customer to add up the total lifetime cost of the appliance. The results were astounding. A simple equation can indeed make people choose differently. The new information made customers buy dryers that use 5% less energy. 5%? That doesn't sound much, does it? If applied in all EU countries, it could save more than 10 million tons of CO2 every year. And how much is 10 million tons of CO2? It's the same as the exhaust of 2 million cars, or the entire CO2 production of countries such as Kenya or Luxembourg. We believe every store in Europe should start doing this. Why wouldn't they? The retailers get to sell higher priced products, the environment benefits, and this time the consumers save money too. You see, green is good for everyone. All it takes is a nudge.
What's interesting with this study now is it's being reproduced in UK, and Greg Barker, the Minister of Energy and Climate Change, he has claimed that if the results are as good as ours, they are considering altering the total energy labeling in UK together with the mandatory EU labeling, and that's kind of a huge impact. But GreeNudge is not only funding energy efficiency studies. We are also working on waste management, in particular food waste, and we are also looking into energy use in buildings as well as sustainable transportation. But we have a special interest in food, and then it's sustainable food, and food which is not only good for the planet, but is good for our health too. Meat, this is one of my favorite topics. And I guess you know that one of the most, or the easiest way we could reduce our carbon footprint as individual, as well as decrease significantly the risk of getting chronic diseases like heart disease, stroke, diabetes type 2, cancer, is actually to reduce meat consumption, in particular red meat, as well as increase the consumption of vegetables. And if all EU citizens became vegetarian, 100% vegetarian, that would be one of the most efficient ways to cut emissions on consumer level. Of course, that's not realistic, but if so, we could save the equivalent of 266 million tons of CO2 every year. And how much is that? It's more than the emissions from 76 average coal plants or the emissions of 52 million cars. An example from Norway. Currently, we are eating approximately twice as much red and processed meat as recommended by the health authorities as WHO and the national ones. And unfortunately, we are not even worst in class. UK, US, Brazil, lots of countries are above us. But that means only due to our own health and the risk of chronic disease, we should voluntarily at least halve meat consumption. And in Germany, how many are Germans there? Quite a few. Did you saw the Green Party's attempt to introduce the Veggie Day? Do you remember what happened? Well, hands off my sausage. This is an old picture from 2009, but it was a turmoil. I mean, people got upset, and some people like Stella McCartney, Paul McCartney had quite successfully introduced like meat-free Mondays and so on. But in Germany, you were definitely not ready. And in Sweden as well, it's not long time ago since the Green Party here as well suggested or proposed a tax on red meat. And Anders Borg, the Minister of Finance, had to go out and say, okay, no, it's not going to be effectuated. And it turns out that it's almost easier to shut down a nuclear power plant than to touch people's bratwurst. It is. It is. Why is this holy plate so holy? It's the last taboo. So, although we agree that, I mean, a vegetarian diet is strict, if you ask me, I wish, but I'm not able to be a full-time vegetarian. Because when my mother-in-law comes up with her big steak and say, "Hey, Gunhild, you want a piece?" I can't refuse it. So it's and I'm convinced that it's good for us and for the planet. But I like to talk about something else, which is easier. Flexitarians. Do you know what that is? After this lecture, you will all be flexitarians. It's actually vegetarians eating meat, you know, from time to time. It's not about banning it, it's just reducing it. So in basically, it's quite simple. You eat more vegetables, more vegetarian, but you're still able to go for that burger after going home from a party Saturday night. But the question is, how do we get people to reduce meat consumption? Knowledge is necessary, but it's not always sufficient to get people to change behavior. We know that. And of course, carrots and sticks are a part of the solution. But sticks, like taxes and regulations, it's often very effective, but it's kind of hard to implement, being a politician. And the carrots, like subsidizing fruits and vegetables, is expensive. So it's not always easy to go that way. But we believe that nudging could be at least part of the solution. So currently, we are doing really exciting experiments in restaurants. And we are looking into, can people be nudged to reduce their meat consumption? No pointing fingers, but just by doing simple alterations on how the buffet is presented, meat at the end and all the vegetarian goody stuff at the beginning. Or we are even looking into whether we could downsize the default size of the steak so that you are getting a smaller normal portion. But if you're an extra hungry person, a big guy, then you can ask for an extra portion for free. And the hypothesis is that like 8 out of 10, maybe a little bit less, would go for the normal size, declining the extra free portion. And then, if that's the results, the final results are as promising as the preliminary data indicates, then this small nudge could have a huge effect. So, this would again be a triple win: people, planet, and not to forget, profits. Google is a company I really admire for a lot of stuff, but they are already also implementing nudging. They are nudging their employees and their cantinas, and they have been doing several things. For example, they have been moving down the bottles of Coke to a kind of an inconvenient place, and then the bottles of water is in the eye level. And they are also covering up their free M&Ms. I mean, that's an anti-nudge in the first place, but that's another thing. And now the Google employees are eating healthier. And the salad buffet is also placed at the entrance of the cantina, so they're helping themselves with salad before they go to the other more carbon-intensive products. And I'm quite convinced that similar approach could be applied to, let's say, the travel and hospitality industry. And I think private companies, private business, they should really strive to make the sustainable defaults. And that has to, or that's all about nudging customers into automatically opt for the right option, the healthy and the sustainable choice. Finally, I'm all about freedom of choice, of course. I think most of us are. But instead of letting the guest have to go through the menus, every single ingredient, where's the tomatoes from, who did produce them, what was his salary, how had the beef, what happened with the beef before it ended up on my plate. I believe in one overriding customer promise. And that's something like, we are constantly worrying about the planet. So your only worry here is to have a great time. Companies choosing for their customers, and the customers, they can really rely upon that the company won't do anything that's unethical. The travel industry is, of course, expected to grow with increase in GDP, and people will continue to fly, they will continue to check in at our hotels and other hotels, and they will, of course, continue to eat in restaurants. And therefore, I think it's pretty much up to the industry itself to make green hospitality and sustainable travel into more fun, more sexy, and desirable. And taking an example from that, the car industry has already proven that a sustainable future, it no longer has to look like this. I mean, it's fun, but it's not kind of... Now it can actually look like this. The new Mercedes SLS AMG electric drive. It's a sports car, one of the coolest, and it runs on 100% renewable electricity. So it's up to us to prove that sustainable hospitality isn't all about spending your night in our hotel nights in places like this, but more like this. This is the new of a new 5-star hotel in Tjuvholmen, Oslo waterfront, and it's built as sustainable as possible, and we are doing a lot on these kind of food issues and so on. And at the end of the day, this is pretty much all about turning corporate responsibility into corporate opportunities for private sector and private companies. Because there is a variety of triple wins, low-hanging fruits out there with great gains for both the environment, for business, and indeed for all of us. And these low-hanging fruits are pretty much just waiting to be discovered, exploited, and of course scaled up and commercialized. So while we have to keep on pushing these guys to become faster and bolder, we can all get a good head start towards sustainability and a nice profit too, with a gentle green nudge. So, while I got to be an advisor on health and sustainable business within the family hotel company, which is of course the most important thing we do with respect to influence, I'm also extremely privileged to be able to manage our philanthropic foundations, and I'm able to choose projects that can make an impact far beyond the world of travel and hospitality. So hopefully I'm able, together with my husband, to spread some of the impatient and optimism that we both share to more than those people staying at our hotels. And I think we have a great job to do in talking about all the opportunities in the field of sustainable business. So that was my little nudge to you. Thanks for having me.